It's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to this edition of Q&A with the Coach. I'm over here at the gym and I've got a question from Codane who says, "Hey Coach, I'm a traditional martial artist at my core, and I know you have got extensive experience in traditional martial arts as well. That is true. For some years now, however, I have been very pragmatic in my approach to martial arts and have started to see traditional martial arts, Chinese and Japanese in particular, in a less appealing light due to what I consider limitations, thanks to their traditions and esoteric backgrounds compared to, for example, Muay Thai, Sanda, kickboxing, or HEMA, historical European martial arts that are more practically oriented. Recently, I've heard from several sources that there is a growing worry in China and Japan that less and less people show an interest in pursuing the traditional arts due to the aforementioned traditions and culture, sticklers for perfection, the idea that everything should take a long time, gated periods between belts, overly complex kata, taolu, revering the sensei, shifu, almost as God and his word as gospel, and so on. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. Do you think that traditional martial arts will slowly die out? Do they need to adapt to a more modern age? Any other thought that comes to mind upon reading this? Thank you for your continuous hard work and sharing your experiences and thoughts with us." Brings fist and palms together. Okay, he's giving me a virtual palm fist salute. Can't do it right now because one of my hands is holding the phone, so palm fist right there. Will traditional martial arts die out? As I was reading that, I started to think, most traditional martial arts are not actually very old. They stem back several generations. Most of them date back to the 1900s, mid-1900s. Take, for example, any martial art that uses a belt system, any martial art that uses a gi, is pretty new. The first martial art to use a gi and a belt system was judo. Judo, which dates all the way back to about 1890, but wasn't fully codified as the system we know today until, well, around the 1920s or so. So judo is like 100 years old, which to a young person sounds like a lifetime, but dude, it's not that old. It's not something that goes back to ancient samurai traditions or something like that. And every single martial art that uses a belt system, that uses a gi, comes after judo. Every single last one of them. They're pretty new. And so this idea that traditional martial arts are this long-standing tradition, as opposed to simply taught traditionally by passing on the traditions of the previous instructor down to the next one, it's not an accurate one. Will they endure forever? No, nothing does. You talked about how things are here in China. That made me think of the way shops on the street, restaurants that you see on the street and so on, work here in China. They're here today and often gone tomorrow. You can walk down the block one day and see a completely different shop or store or restaurant sprout up in the place of one of the old ones that you got used to practically overnight. It's pretty common, especially in a city this big. So, how long is, say, Taekwondo going to last? Well, how long did it last? Taekwondo is one of those martial arts, traditional martial arts, that again isn't that old. Now, some people will say, no, it stems from some older martial arts like taijiquan and whatever. Newsflash, no it doesn't. Not really. Not really. It's bastardized Shotokan karate, and because of Korean nationalism, an appeal to Korean nationalism, they said, hey, let's tell people this stems from ancient Korean martial arts. Nobody was practicing Taekwondo back then. Nobody was doing it in the 1950s, man. Everybody who practices Taekwondo today, who so-called practices Taekwondo today, that's a historical revival. They're kind of like the equivalent of HEMA guys, historical European martial arts guys. Those dudes are not following an ancient tradition passed down from one generation to the next since the days of the European knights. No, these are dudes who picked up like some old German codices of sword fighting and said, this looks like a fun idea to try to figure this stuff out. Let's go buy some swords and do some sword stuff together. And that's the origin story of HEMA. Again, it's not... So, Taekwondo has gone through a bunch of iterations, even within my lifetime. It's not the same martial art today as it was when I was in my 20s, when I was still competing in Taekwondo. It's not the same. It's got a different rule set. They use different equipment. They've got different judging parameters. They train differently. They use different techniques. It's effectively a different martial art. It's effectively a different style now than it was back then. So it's kind of weird, like an old school Taekwondo black belt says, I have a black belt in Taekwondo, and then like some 6-year-old today is like, so do I. We are not the same, right? Nothing in this world endures forever. Least of all, traditional martial arts. How many traditions do you have in your family? You probably have a few. Maybe you celebrate the same holiday every year. Christmas is coming up next month. Ho, ho, ho. That is a long-standing Western tradition held dear by millions of families across the world. Not as much over here in China because, well, just the tradition never really caught on over here. So, what other traditions do you have? What other tradition? Can you think of any traditions your family has had that maybe you were the weak link in the chain that stopped that tradition? For example, this happens a lot. A lot of people have like a family religion and their family was part of that religion for many years. And then some kid is like, you know what? I think I don't want to be part of this religion anymore. I'm going to go join another church or none of them or be an atheist or something like that. And the tradition is broken. How about judo? Judo is definitely not the same sport today as it was when Jigoro Kano developed his Kano Jiu-Jitsu back in the 1800s. It's not the same sport today as it was in the 1980s. It's similar, but it's importantly different. Is judo going to be the same in 100 years? I don't even know if judo is going to be around in 100 years. People will still be fighting, probably practicing fighting techniques then, but are they going to be dressing up, wearing the gi, bowing to a flag, calling people Asian words nobody understands? Sensei, Shifu, Shidoshi, Master, Grandmaster, Kun Kru, whatever. Are they going to be putting great importance on a piece of fabric tied around the waist? Like, oh, you have a black one of those, so you must be very special. Oh, yours is just white. I guess not. You must be a noob. Is that an important tradition? Some people certainly ascribe importance to it, but is it important? Because if not, why would it endure? What martial arts have endured the test of time? Basically, boxing and wrestling. Every culture across this world has independently developed some permutation of wrestling, submission, grappling, throwing people around. pinning people, making people beg for mercy and say uncle. Every culture in the world has independently done that. Boxing is a bit of an anomaly because most cultures have never independently come up with fist fighting. Because generally speaking, it's not a good idea to hit hard stuff with a fist unless it's reinforced, wrapped up, gloved up, etc. But the ancient Greeks did it a long time ago, thousands of years ago. Wrapped up their hands with leather straps and punched each other for sport. And that's been going on for a while because there's a certain appeal to it. There's a certain thing about boxing that seems very comprehensible. People seem to like it. They get it. They're like, if this dude punches him more than he punches him, then he's the winner. I get it. I understand. If I was in there, I'd punch him in the face too. It gets us right in the guts, man, viscerally. We sort of get it. What you were describing sounded a lot like a cult in your question. When you were describing the traditions of many traditional martial arts, like considering your instructor to be like a god, for example. If that happens, you're definitely in a cult. What's the difference between a religion and a cult? Well, if we check a dictionary real quick, that's going to tell us that a cult is where a person or an object becomes the point of worship. When that becomes your god. For example, when the founder of the cult becomes the god, then when that becomes the point of worship, that's definitely a cult. And there are a lot of martial arts cults out there, a lot of them. Some of you probably belong to them. I've received a lot of comments from cultists. Man, if you want to talk to cultists on the internet, all you have to do is make a video debunking magic tricks that crappy fake martial artists do, and then they will come and find you and say, no, 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 no. What's actually, you don't understand. My master actually can do magic tricks and shoot lightning bolts out of his butt and do telekinesis with his mind. Here's a question I have. Why is it that when we're dealing with a martial arts cult, especially one that believes that their instructor has superpowers and tells them, if you practice this long enough, you also can develop superpowers, the only one in the cult who can actually do the magic trick is the cult leader, and they only work on the cult members? Always, invariably, without exception. Try this, for example. You run into one of these martial arts cultists, and they claim that in their style, right, all they need to do is hold up like one finger and they can blast you across the room because reasons. And so ask them, can you do that? Oh, no, but I'm not advanced enough yet, but my master can. That's always the story. If there's only one guy, let's just assume for a minute. Let's work under the assumption that this is true. That the secret master actually does have the secret special superpower. That he can do it. That it's real. Okay? What good is it if he's the only guy who can do it and he can't actually teach it? What a crappy teacher if he can't actually teach other people to do the thing that he can do and he claims to be able to teach them. In a way, that's almost worse. Can you imagine if you had you went to train with a world champion in jiu-jitsu because you want to be good at jiu-jitsu and you assume this guy's a world champion, so he can probably teach me to be good at jiu-jitsu like him, and then he doesn't actually teach you any jiu-jitsu? That would suck. That would be like the worst jiu-jitsu teacher ever, because you'd have all these high expectations. You'd probably be paying him through the nose for his experience, and then he wouldn't give you the thing you paid for. And after training for 10 years, you still don't know anything about jiu-jitsu. And yet that exact same thing is happening with all these martial arts cults. If you train as long as me and focus and meditate like I do and pay me continuous lifetime payments of $59.95, then you also will develop telekinesis eventually. Okay, I got sidetracked big time there. So, look, in the long run, as far as martial arts goes, there are a lot of different reasons to train in martial arts. Some people want to have a historical reenactment, right? Like HEMA, for example, historical European martial arts. Generally, people don't practice with broadswords because they might get into a broadsword fight on the streets or something like that. They do it because it's fun. They enjoy it. It's kind of neat. It's mentally stimulating to pore over history and things like that. Some martial arts have a sporting element, like Taekwondo, for example. Old school and modern, different sports, but you're kicking people, you're jumping around, you're having fun. It's a good time for some people. That's cool, great. And as long as people are enjoying it, it's going to persist. If it becomes an endless slog fest, yeah, it's definitely going to die. A lot about training in combat sports, the highly successful techniques can become an endless slogfest, but watching it, I think that's where the real fun is, being a spectator. Spectators generally tend to keep sports alive. And if there's nobody watching, the people doing it will also disappear. So as long as people are watching judo, looking for it, willing to find it, willing to patronize it, it's going to happen. As long as people want little Billy to earn his black belt in karate before whatever thing. Have you heard this? Like all these suburban moms telling their little kids, you've got to earn your black belt in karate before I let you go eat your dessert, or some silly little, I don't know. It's so dumb to me. But I've dealt with a few parents like this when I was a Taekwondo instructor. This lady came to me and said, my son needs to get a black belt. I said, oh, how old is he? 10. Well, he's not eligible to earn a black belt until he's, at the time it was 16. I think they might have lowered it to 15 now. No, he needs a black belt. How much will it cost? Wait, she wanted to buy a black belt from me. She wanted me to just give him the black belt after he jumped through a couple of hoops, some kind of weird formality, and my answer was no. My integrity is not for sale. It's folks like that who kill traditional martial arts. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.